Eliza was a wisp of a girl, barely more than a child herself, with wide, frightened eyes the color of a stormy sea. Her simple dress, once a cheerful blue, was now faded and worn, a reflection of the hardship her family had endured. They had fallen into debt after a series of bad harvests, and in a desperate attempt to save their farm, they made the heartbreaking decision to offer Eliza as a bride at auction. Eliza's heart pounded in her chest like a trapped bird. She clutched a small, worn wooden doll, her only comfort in this terrifying situation. She was with child, and the thought of her baby being born into this uncertainty filled her with dread. She longed for the simple life she once knew, tending to the chickens and helping her mother in the garden. Now, she was nothing more than a prize to be bought and sold. The auction was held in the town square, the air thick with the smell of dust and desperation. Men with hard faces and greedy eyes gathered, their voices loud and boisterous. Eliza felt like a lamb surrounded by wolves, each glance making her skin crawl. She prayed for a miracle, a kind soul who would see past her circumstances and offer her a chance at a decent life. But as the auctioneer's voice rang out, her hopes began to dwindle. The auctioneer, a portly man with a booming voice, began to list Eliza's attributes as if she were livestock. He spoke of her youth, her health, and her ability to bear children, reducing her to nothing more than a breeding mare. Eliza squeezed her eyes shut, tears stinging her cheeks. She wished she could disappear, melt into the dusty ground beneath her feet. Around her, men chuckled and whispered, their gazes lingering on her swollen belly. Some made crude remarks about her appearance, while others speculated about the price she would fetch. Eliza felt utterly exposed and vulnerable, her dignity stripped away. The air crackled with anticipation, a palpable sense of greed and lust that made her stomach churn. The bidding started low, hesitant at first, but quickly escalated as the men vied for ownership of her. Each raise of a hand, each shouted offer, felt like a blow to Eliza's heart. She was a pawn in their game, a prize to be won, her fate hanging in the balance. She scanned the crowd, desperately searching for a glimmer of compassion, a sign of hope in the sea of avarice. But all she saw were hungry eyes and calculating smiles. Standing near the back of the crowd, almost hidden in the shadows, was Caleb. He was a tall, weathered man with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. He wasn't there to bid on a wife. Caleb had simply come to town to purchase some supplies for his ranch, a place nestled in a quiet valley far from the hustle and bustle of town. The auction had caught his attention, but he felt a deep unease as he watched the proceedings. Unlike the other men, Caleb didn't leer or shout. He observed with a quiet sadness, his heart aching for the young woman on the auction block. He saw the fear in her eyes, the vulnerability in her posture. He recognized the desperation that drove her family to such a drastic measure. Caleb was a widower, having lost his wife and child to illness years ago. The pain of that loss had softened him, making him more sensitive to the suffering of others. He understood the value of kindness and compassion, and he couldn't bear to witness Eliza's humiliation without feeling a pang of empathy. He wasn't looking for love, but something in him stirred as he watched her, a deep-seated need to protect the innocent. The bidding war continued, escalating to a sum Eliza's family could only have dreamed of. Finally, the auctioneer slammed his gavel. Sold. To Silas Blackwood for the sum of $500. Silas Blackwood was a man known for his wealth and his cruelty. He owned the largest ranch in the county, but his success came at the expense of others. He was a hard taskmaster, demanding obedience and showing little compassion. A dark shadow seemed to cling to him, a testament to his cold heart. Eliza's heart sank as she was led towards Silas. He examined her with a calculating gaze, his lips curled into a thin, cruel smile. "Well, well," he said, his voice raspy. "You're a pretty little thing. You'll work hard for me, won't you?" Eliza could only nod, her throat tight with fear. She knew she was entering a new kind of hell, one where she would be nothing more than a servant, a slave to Silas Blackwood's whims. Her dreams of a kind rescuer were dashed, she was trapped. Silas led her away, the crowd parting before him like the Red Sea, a silent acknowledgement of his power. Caleb watched as Silas led Eliza away, his heart heavy with anger and frustration. He couldn't shake the image of her terrified face, the way she flinched at Silas's touch. He knew Silas Blackwood. Everyone in the county knew him. Stories of his harsh treatment of workers and his ruthless business dealings were common knowledge. As Silas and Eliza approached Silas's wagon, Silas shoved her roughly onto the seat. Eliza cried out, clutching her stomach. Caleb clenched his fists. That was it. He couldn't stand by and watch this happen. He had to do something. Ignoring the whispers and stares of the crowd, Caleb strode purposefully towards Silas. He stopped in front of the wagon, his eyes meeting Silas's cold, calculating gaze. "Blackwood," Caleb said, his voice calm but firm. "I need to speak with you." Silas raised an eyebrow, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. He clearly didn't appreciate being challenged, especially in public. "What is it, rancher?" Silas sneered. "Got a problem with my purchase?" Caleb took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to do. "As a matter of fact," he said, "I do. I'll buy her from you, Silas," Caleb stated plainly, his gaze unwavering. Silas threw his head back and laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the square. "Buy her? You think I'd sell her after paying good money?" "I'll pay you more," Caleb countered, pulling a pouch of coins from his pocket. "Enough to make it worth your while." He held up the pouch, letting the coins glint in the sunlight. The crowd murmured, surprised by Caleb's boldness. Silas's eyes narrowed, his gaze shifting from Caleb to the pouch and back again. Greed flickered in his eyes. He had no real need for Eliza, he'd bought her on a whim, a way to assert his dominance. If he could turn a profit, why not? "How much?" Silas asked, his voice suddenly less abrasive. $700, Caleb offered, naming a sum that was more than fair. Silas pretended to consider, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Make it 8, and we have a deal." Caleb hesitated for only a moment. Eliza's well-being was worth more than any amount of money. "Agreed," he said, handing over the pouch. Silas counted the coins quickly, a satisfied smirk spreading across his face. "She's yours, rancher," Silas said, dismissing them with a wave of his hand. "Enjoy your purchase." Caleb turned to Eliza, his expression gentle. "Come on, miss," he said softly. "Let's get you away from here." Eliza stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. She couldn't understand why this kind-looking man would spend so much money on her. She had expected to be subjected to Silas's cruelty, but now she didn't know what to expect. Hesitantly, she reached out and took Caleb's hand. His touch was warm and reassuring, a stark contrast to Silas's rough grip. He helped her down from the wagon, his strong hand steadying her. What's going to happen to me?" Eliza asked, her voice trembling. Caleb smiled, a reassuring gesture that eased some of her fear. "You're coming home with me, miss," he said. "To my ranch. You'll be safe there. I promise." He led her towards his own wagon, a simple but sturdy vehicle. As they climbed in, Eliza glanced back at Silas, who was already walking away, counting his money. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just traded one uncertainty for another. But as she looked at Caleb's kind face, a tiny spark of hope flickered within her heart. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had found her rescuer after all. The ride to Caleb's ranch was long and quiet. Eliza sat stiffly beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She stole glances at Caleb, trying to decipher his intentions. He seemed genuinely kind, but she had learned not to trust appearances. After all, Silas had seemed powerful and wealthy, but his kindness was only a facade. The countryside rolled by, a tapestry of green fields and towering trees. As they traveled further from town, Eliza began to relax slightly. The air was cleaner here, the sounds of nature replacing the noise and bustle of the town square. Caleb noticed her unease and tried to put her at ease. "It's a long ride, miss," he said gently. "Feel free to rest. We'll be there before nightfall." Eliza shook her head. I couldn't," she stammered. "I don't want to be any trouble." Caleb smiled warmly. "You're no trouble at all, Eliza," he said, using her first name for the first time. "Just relax. I'll take care of everything." His words were comforting, but Eliza couldn't shake the feeling of apprehension. She still didn't know what to expect, but she knew one thing for sure: her life had changed forever. She hoped that change would be for the better. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Caleb's ranch came into view. It was a modest but well-kept homestead, with a sturdy wooden house, a barn, and several outbuildings. A small herd of cattle grazed peacefully in a nearby pasture. Caleb helped Eliza down from the wagon, and she gazed around in wonder. It was nothing like Silas Blackwood's sprawling estate. This place felt homely. "Welcome to my little piece of heaven, Eliza," Caleb said, his voice filled with pride. "I hope you'll be happy here." He led her inside the house, which was simply furnished but spotlessly clean. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting a warm glow throughout the room. The aroma of freshly baked bread filled the air, making Eliza's stomach rumble. "I've prepared a room for you," Caleb said, leading her down a short hallway. "It's not much, but it's comfortable. I hope you'll find it to your liking." He opened the door to a small, cozy room with a patchwork quilt on the bed and a vase of wildflowers on the windowsill. It was the most welcoming space Eliza had seen in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, she could find peace here. The next morning, Eliza awoke to the sound of birds singing and the gentle clucking of chickens. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the cozy room. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace. She dressed and went to the kitchen, where Caleb was already preparing breakfast. He greeted her with a warm smile and offered her a plate of steaming oatmeal and fresh fruit. "Good morning, Eliza," he said. "Sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," she replied, surprised by his thoughtfulness. "This looks delicious." As they ate, Caleb explained the layout of the ranch and introduced her to some of the people who lived and worked there. There was Mrs. Henderson, a kind elderly woman who helped with the cooking and cleaning, and young Billy, an orphaned boy who helped with the chores. They were all friendly and welcoming, making Eliza feel like she was part of a family. She also learned that Caleb's ranch was a safe haven for those in need, a place where people could find kindness and compassion. It was a stark contrast to the harsh world she had known, and Eliza began to feel a sense of hope that she could truly build a new life here. Days turned into weeks, and Eliza slowly began to settle into life at the ranch. She helped Mrs. Henderson with the cooking and cleaning, tended to the garden, and even learned to milk the cows. The work was hard, but it was satisfying, and she enjoyed the companionship of the other residents. Caleb was always kind and considerate, never demanding or harsh. He treated her with respect and made sure she had everything she needed. He checked on her regularly, asking about her health and offering words of encouragement. One afternoon, as they were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Eliza turned to Caleb and said, "Thank you, Caleb. For everything. You saved me from a terrible fate." Caleb smiled gently. "You don't need to thank me, Eliza," he said. "I just did what I thought was right." "But why?" Eliza asked. "Why would you spend so much money on a stranger?" Caleb hesitated for a moment, then said, "Because everyone deserves a chance at happiness, Eliza. And because I saw something special in you." He didn't elaborate, but Eliza understood. He saw her, not as a burden or a possession, but as a person worthy of kindness and compassion. And that meant the world to her. As Eliza's pregnancy progressed, Caleb took extra care to ensure her comfort and well-being. He built her a comfortable rocking chair for the porch, so she could rest and enjoy the fresh air. He made sure she had plenty of nutritious food to eat, and he read to her in the evenings, sharing stories and poems that transported her to other worlds. He even started knitting baby clothes, his large hand surprisingly adept at the delicate task. Eliza watched him, her heart swelling with affection. She had never known such kindness, such selfless devotion. One day, Caleb took Eliza to see the town doctor, ensuring she and the baby were healthy. The doctor praised Caleb for his attentiveness and care. On the way back to the ranch, Eliza placed her hand on Caleb's arm. "You're going to be a wonderful father, Caleb," she said softly. Caleb's smile faltered, and a shadow crossed his face. "I don't know about that, Eliza," he said quietly. "I wasn't so good the first time around." Eliza sensed a deep sadness in his voice, a hidden pain that he had carried for a long time. She realized that Caleb's kindness stemmed not only from his good heart but also from his own past suffering. It made her appreciate him even more. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. Caleb's words echoed in her mind, filling her with curiosity and concern. She decided to ask Mrs. Henderson about Caleb's past. The next morning, as they were washing dishes, Eliza broached the subject. "Mrs. Henderson," she said hesitantly, "do you know? Did Caleb ever have a family?" Mrs. Henderson's face softened. "Oh, child," she said sadly, "Caleb was married to the sweetest woman you ever did meet. Her name was Sarah, and they were so in love. They had a little girl, too, a beautiful baby with eyes just like her mama." Eliza listened intently, her heart aching for Caleb. "But then," Mrs. Henderson continued, her voice trembling, "a terrible fever swept through the town. Sarah and the baby both got sick, and they didn't make it." Eliza gasped, tears welling up in her eyes. "Oh, Caleb," she whispered. "How awful." "It broke his heart, child," Mrs. Henderson said, wiping away a tear. "He was never the same after that. He became quiet and withdrawn, dedicating his life to helping others, as if trying to make up for something." Now Eliza understood. Caleb's kindness wasn't just a virtue, it was a way of healing, a way of honoring the memory of his lost loved ones. And she, in turn, was helping him heal, too. A few weeks later, as Eliza's due date approached, a dark cloud appeared on the horizon. Silas Blackwood rode up to the ranch, his face contorted with anger. He dismounted his horse and strode towards Caleb, who was working in the barn. "Blackwood," Caleb said, his voice wary. "What do you want?" "I want her back," Silas snarled, pointing towards the house. "I made a mistake selling her to you. She's worth more to me than $800. Caleb stood his ground, his eyes blazing with anger. "You have no right to her, Silas. I bought her fair and square." "I don't care about your fair and square," Silas retorted. "She's carrying a child that could work for me for years to come. I want her, and I'm going to get her, one way or another." He took a step closer to Caleb, his fists clenched. "And if you don't hand her over, I'll take everything you have." Eliza, who had been watching from the porch, ran towards them, her heart pounding with fear. "Caleb, no," she cried. "Don't do it. It's not worth it." Silas turned his gaze towards Eliza, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Come on, little bird," he said. "Time to come home." But Caleb refused to back down. He stepped in front of Eliza, shielding her from Silas's gaze. "You'll have to go through me, Silas," he said, his voice steely. Just then, Mrs. Henderson and Billy came running out of the house, armed with pitchforks. They were followed by other residents of the ranch, all determined to protect Eliza and Caleb. "You're not taking her, Blackwood," Mrs. Henderson declared, her voice surprisingly strong. "We won't let you." Silas looked around at the determined faces, his confidence wavering. He hadn't expected this kind of resistance. He was used to people cowering before him, not standing up to him. "Fine," he sneered. Have it your way. But don't think you've seen the last of me. I'll be back, and next time, you won't be so lucky." He mounted his horse and rode away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Eliza ran to Caleb and threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you for protecting me." Caleb held her close, his heart filled with a mixture of relief and fear. He knew that Silas would be back, and he had to be ready to defend Eliza and his ranch. He wouldn't let Silas take her, not now, not ever. The next few weeks were filled with tension. Caleb and the community prepared for Silas's return, reinforcing the fences, taking turns standing guard, and making sure Eliza was never alone. The fear was palpable, but so was the sense of unity. They were a family now, bound together by their shared experience and their determination to protect each other. One evening, as they were gathered around the fire, Mrs. Henderson said, "We may not have much, but we have each other. And that's more than Silas Blackwood will ever have." Her words resonated with everyone, filling them with a renewed sense of hope and courage. They knew they were facing a powerful enemy, but they also knew that they were stronger together. Finally, the day arrived when Eliza went into labor. Caleb and Mrs. Henderson helped her through the long and difficult hours, offering words of encouragement and wiping her brow. The rest of the community waited anxiously outside, praying for a safe delivery. They knew that Silas could return at any moment, but they refused to let fear consume them. They would face whatever came their way, together. Their strength came from their bond with each other. Finally, a cry pierced the air, a tiny, fragile sound that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Eliza had given birth to a healthy baby girl. But their joy was short-lived. Just as the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow over the ranch, Silas Blackwood returned, this time with a group of armed men. They surrounded the ranch, their faces grim and determined. Caleb and the community stood their ground, armed with pitchforks, shovels, and whatever else they could find. They formed a line in front of the house, their faces set with resolve. Silas rode forward, his voice booming. "I've come for what's mine," he declared. "Hand her over, and I'll spare you." Caleb stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "She's not yours, Silas. She's free. And we won't let you take her." A tense silence hung in the air, broken only by the cries of the newborn baby. Silas's men shifted nervously, unsure of what to do. They saw the determination in the eyes of the community, the unwavering resolve to protect what was theirs. They hesitated to attack. Silas, seeing that he was outnumbered and outmatched in spirit, finally relented. "Fine," he snarled. "You win. But don't think this is over. I'll find a way to make you pay." He turned his horse and rode away, his men following close behind. The community had won, not with violence, but with unity and courage. In the days that followed, Eliza and Caleb settled into their new roles as parents. They named their daughter Hope, a symbol of their resilience and their belief in a brighter future. The community rejoiced, showering them with gifts and offers of help. As Eliza held Hope in her arms, gazing at her tiny, perfect face, she realized that she had finally found what she had been searching for, a home, a family, and a love that transcended all obstacles. She looked at Caleb, who was watching her with a mixture of tenderness and awe, and she knew that their connection was something special, something that had been forged in the fires of adversity. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch, rocking Hope to sleep, Caleb turned to Eliza and said, "You know, I never thought I could be happy again after losing Sarah and my little girl. But you and Hope. You've given me a new reason to live." Eliza smiled, her heart overflowing with love. "You've given me a new life, Caleb," she said softly. "I don't know where I'd be without you." They sat in silence for a moment, enjoying the peace and quiet of the ranch, the warmth of each other's company. The threat of Silas Blackwood still lingered in the air, but they knew that they could face whatever came their way, as long as they had each other. Weeks turned into months, and the threat of Silas Blackwood faded into the background. Eliza and Caleb focused on raising hope, enjoying the simple pleasures of ranch life, and growing closer with each passing day. They discovered shared interests and values, finding comfort and companionship in each other's presence. They laughed together, cried together, and supported each other through thick and thin. One sunny afternoon, as they were working in the garden, Eliza turned to Caleb and said, "Caleb, I." She hesitated, unsure of how to express her feelings. Caleb looked at her, his eyes filled with love and understanding. "What is it, Eliza?" he asked gently. Eliza took a deep breath and said, "I've fallen in love with you, Caleb. Not just out of gratitude, but because of the kind, generous man you are. You've given me a home, a family, and a reason to hope again." Caleb's face lit up with joy. "I love you too, Eliza," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "More than words can say. You and hope have brought so much light into my life. I never thought I could love again, but you've shown me that it's possible." They embraced, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. They knew that their relationship was built on a foundation of mutual respect, trust, and compassion, and they were ready to face whatever the future held, together. A few weeks later, Caleb led Eliza to their favorite spot on the ranch, a grassy knoll overlooking the valley. The sun was setting, painting the sky in vibrant colors. He had spread a blanket on the ground and prepared a picnic basket filled with her favorite treats. As they ate, Caleb grew quiet, his expression serious. Eliza sensed that something was on his mind. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, "Eliza, I know this might seem sudden, but I can't imagine my life without you and hope. You've brought so much joy and love into my world. You've shown me that it's possible to heal and to love again." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, wooden box. He opened it to reveal a simple silver ring. "Eliza," he continued, his voice trembling with emotion, "will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not because you owe me anything, not because of hope, but because you love me, and I love you." Tears welled up in Eliza's eyes. She had dreamed of this moment, but she never thought it would actually happen. "Yes, Caleb," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Caleb slipped the ring onto her finger, and they embraced, their hearts filled with a love that was stronger than any obstacle. They knew that their journey had been difficult, but it had led them to each other, and that was all that mattered. The wedding was a simple but joyous affair, held in the ranch's barn, decorated with wildflowers and handmade decorations. The entire community attended, showering Eliza and Caleb with love and well wishes. Mrs. Henderson baked a beautiful cake, and Billy played a cheerful tune on his harmonica. As Eliza walked down the aisle, holding Hope in her arms, she couldn't help but smile. She had come so far from the terrified girl who had been sold at auction. She had found a true home, a loving family, and a partner who cherished her for who she was. Caleb waited for her at the altar, his eyes shining with love. He took her hand and squeezed it gently. They exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. As they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, Eliza knew that she had finally found her happily ever after. She was safe, she was loved, and she was home. The gentle rancher had saved her, not just from a cruel fate, but from a life of loneliness and despair. And in return, she had given him a new reason to live, a new family to cherish, and a love that would last a lifetime. The end.